How can we make sure that we are not getting stuck into the collector fallacy, where we have thousands of notes and ideas, but we are not using them at all? Can they be used to strengthen our decision-making process? Or how we make sure that they are not fading away from our memory and we are getting the best return on the time invested? We will answer all these questions during this video, as I will introduce you to the second phase of my note-taking process, the integration phase. Its goal is to expand your mind, to widen your perspective, and at the end, make you a little bit more wiser. So let's get started and see you after the intro. Welcome back, I'm Andrei, and in the previous video on this series, we talked about how to capture notes and ideas from different sources like books, articles, or even podcasts or videos. We discovered some of my favorite tools to make this part of the process as easy and effective as possible. We will continue now by taking a look on a high-level overview of the integration process. We start from where we left in the previous video. All the resources captured from different sources are centralized in one location. I come back usually after a couple of days to review the initial notes and see which ideas can be discarded or promoted to my Obsidian vault. For the later ones, I use a specific note format and structure, but for more on that we will see later. I connect them to other related existing notes. I check and I think in what context I might come back to this information. How my future self can easily find what he needs. This linking of notes creates a mesh that grows with each day. With it, new unique ideas emerge, strengthening our thinking and mental models. When this happens, I will take the emergent idea and create a new note. This represents a seed for a new type of content. In time, it can shape in the form of a blog post, newsletter, or even a video like you see right now. During this process, I use spaced repetition to transfer these notes to my long-term memory. I do this because it breaks the strong dependency on our digital devices, and it enables us to come up with valuable content anywhere. If this picture looks too abstract to you, don't worry. We will go next through a practical use case and use it to clarify all steps one by one. I think it is important first to explain the term, especially for non-native English speakers like me that might not have encountered it before. In education, cramming or mass learning is a pretty common practice between students where they intensively absorb a large volume of information only a couple of days before the exam. Especially during my university, I was guilty multiple times of this practice. When an upcoming exam was on the horizon, I was starting 1 week before that to study and try to memorize as much content as possible. Some of my peers were even starting 1 or 2 days before the exam and managed to take a passing grade. The reason why this topic sparked my interest was to find out if there is another way to prevent this kind of behavior and its consequences. In addition, I would like to share the results for future generations so they have a chance to do it differently, as time is the most precious resource that we can't get it back. After doing some initial research on how to approach this topic, it came down to these 3 books. Using the methods I described in my previous video, I went through these books and I started compiling notes. Let's have a look on how exactly they look, starting with the book Limitless by Jim Kwik. Jim Kwik is one of the most famous learning experts with more than 25 years of experience supporting and training top actors or CEOs from Richard Branson, Elon Musk, to Will Smith or Jim Carrey. In 2020, he released the book Limitless, where he talks about expanding our potential and growing our mind. The book is structured around the idea that we have to train our mind, have a clear purpose, and a wide selection of methods that he collected over the years. In the next part, we will be using Obsidian. If you are not familiar to this tool, click the link on top and check out my quick video on how to get started. There I go over the basic of the tool and show you how I personalized it through custom plugins and themes. If you already know and worked with Obsidian, feel free to continue to the next part of this video. We are now in Obsidian using the minimalist theme and some custom colors for some of the headlines. You can see a variety of notes, Some are ideas that I found useful, some are codes that I think are interesting, and some are action items. During reading, it is important to extract questions around the key topics of the chapter. I use a simple bullet list format and group all the notes under them. An advantage of this structure is that I can fold all points to hide the answers and push myself to recall them from my memory. This is a form of active recall that helps solidify information on the long term. This concept comes from the book How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler, as mentioned in my previous video. The concept is that materials that insert questions to focus the reader on the main ideas increase the learning performance. Jim Quick, already being exposed to Adler's work, introduced this principle also in the structure of his book. At the beginning of each chapter, you will find the most important questions that he tries to answer through it. This is a very useful technique to frame the learning process. However, not a lot of authors are offering this to you. In that case, you are responsible to find the right questions to ask. Our initial goal was to answer the question, is cramming an effective way to learn? If we scroll down, you see the questions also in these notes. Effective learning is a key idea that Jim Quick raises throughout the book. Under the question, I added some insights collected during the reading phase. For example, the last bullet point contains alternative techniques to cramming, as well it leads us to another book that contains additional notes on the topic. As we open the second book, we discover the concepts of interleaving, generative learning, and spaced repetition, and many more. If we open the one on spaced repetition, we discover a new type of note. Its role is to encapsulate all knowledge around this concept. The structure is quite simple. It starts with a brief explanation of the topic, continues with some guiding questions, and finishes with a list of references from different locations. In Obsidian, you can see the content of the link while hovering over it, or you can choose to embed this reference to this note by simply adding exclamation mark in front. As we are building these notes in our own words, a few things happen in our mind. The brain stabilizes the memory traces, fills gaps, and gives meaning. This is part of the consolidation phase of learning, a step that is critical for long-term memorization. Check what happens if I increase the depth of the graph. More and more concepts become visible, creating a map of knowledge around the core concept. With every idea you add and connect, your mental models become stronger, your thinking becomes better, and creating new content becomes easier. Jim Quick came up with the idea of two villains, digital dementia and digital deduction. One weakens your memory muscles, and the other is taking over your critical thinking and reasoning. In addition, studies show that the overuse of technology can be harmful not only to our bodies but as well as our mind. Therefore, the last step of this integration phase is to transfer as much of these notes to my long-term memory. This step is important to me because it reduces the dependency on the actual notes, as well it pushes my cognitive capabilities to expand. People forget almost 70% of what they learn in the first 24 hours. A German researcher, Hermann Ebbinghaus, showed that within 30 days, 90% of what we learn is gone. The good news is that in the last decades, scientists and researchers studied this question of effective learning and came up with a couple of solutions and practices that mitigate some of the issues that I mentioned. One of the solutions I would like to highlight is spaced repetition. This technique involves recalling new material from memory at different intervals of time. Using spaced repetition, the forgetting curve becomes something like this. As you see, with more repetition, the amount of information that is lost is greatly reduced. To obtain this kind of results, I use a tool called Anki, and I synchronize all notes and flashcards through the Obsidian plugin called Obsidian to Anki. I have it configured to scan all notes and convert the header lines as the front of the flashcard and the text after as the back of the card. If you never heard of Anki or never use it in combination with Obsidian, check my video by clicking on the link above. In the first video of this series, we started with understanding how reading is a great source of ideas and knowledge. We went through different categories of sources for new information, and you saw the process I used for this capture phase. In this video, we made sure that we don't fall into the collector's trap by building a process that distills this information, extracts the ideas that are valuable to us, connects them to other previous knowledge, and strengthens our mental models and cognitive performance. In the next video, we'll focus on the last part of the process, the creation phase. The goal is to give back to the world around us our own ideas and perspectives. Finally, we will discuss about different content types and what channels you can use to share your ideas with other similar-minded or interested persons. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, don't forget to subscribe and make your goals happen.